So my name is Matthew Kemshaw, and I'm here to present today about my thesis research. This is the finished title of my thesis. I actually just submitted my final thesis last weekend. So and so I'm from Vancouver Island. I grew up in Shawnigan Lake, and I'm living in Victoria now. My research is actually based in Vancouver, in East Vancouver. So I worked in Vancouver for 3 years, and I'll explain some of the context about my research shortly. But yeah,
Matthew, I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you want to be on camera?
I should move over here if I do. Hey.
Okay.
I'll spend my time over here.
Okay.
So this is the plan of action for my presentation. I'll explain a little bit of the context about the situation and what my research is about. I'll tell you a bit about my research and then explain some of the interesting findings that came out of my research. Talk a little bit about so why does this matter, and then hopefully we'll have some time for questions. And like Emily, I'm really open to questions coming up anytime. Whenever you have something that you want to say, please just shout out at any point and ask questions or comments and metaphysical speculations, whatever you like. So in 2009, I moved from Victoria. I was actually working with the Life Cycles Project Society in Victoria and running school gardening projects, and got an opportunity to move to Vancouver to do some really interesting work with youth and trying to empower more youth to get involved with community gardens. And I actually got involved right in this neighborhood with a whole bunch of different interesting projects that were going on. So on this side, just a half block over here, I was working in a big community garden, running a community nursery. And on the other side of the street here, I was volunteering with this really interesting project based out of a center called the Purple Thistle. So yeah, I moved here and I started getting involved in this place, the Purple Thistle. So the Purple Thistle is this really interesting youth-run arts and activism center. It was founded in 2001 by a man named Matt Hearn, who was working at the time in a really kind of progressive democratic school in North Vancouver where Emily worked, called Windsor House. And Matt was hanging out with a bunch of high school students who he was noticing were really kind of falling away from school and really kind of becoming sort of uninterested in schooling and really not finding a lot of passion in their lives. So they were sitting around in a kitchen, and Matt asked these kids, what are you doing when you feel happy? Like, what makes you truly thrive? And they started talking about a lot of different kind of creative things that they like to do, making art and doing a lot of different kinds of creative projects. And Matt said, well, let's do that. And so these young teenagers and Matt got a space in East Vancouver, and they created this kind of youth-run space where youth could pretty much do whatever they wanted to do. And it became a really interesting model of kind of youth participation. It became the Purple Thistle. And when I moved to Vancouver in 2009, I had heard all about this. I was really interested in education and learning, and Matt Hearn and the work of the Purple Thistle, it was on the west coast of Canada, a really kind of big deal, and sort of all over North America it's known. So I got involved as a volunteer in starting to build some gardens. So this is the first garden that we built. This is on Parker Street. So this is actually the Purple Thistle here in the upstairs space of the Murgatroyd building. The picture you saw was inside there. So we started, and this was just a grassy boulevard. This is a pretty industrial part of East Vancouver. It butts up against the CN rail line where all of Vancouver's food comes into the city. Big, large rail line, and there's lots of industrial warehousing. There's a lot of artist spaces and then just a lot of warehouse spaces. So there's a street here. It's truck traffic, and we had this barbed wire fence and all these trucks parked there, and this kind of rough grass dirt. Quite a large stretch. It's about 13 or 14 feet deep and probably about 200 feet long. So we started building these brick planters and bringing in lots of organic material and starting to build gardens. It was totally a collective effort. Anybody who wanted to be involved could be involved. There was no allotments. It's totally just a food commons. Anybody who wanted to be involved was involved in however they decided they wanted to be. And it was super successful. In the first year, we had probably about 200 people who showed up and got involved.
Is this youth or?
Everybody, just anybody. It was a lot of youth, but it was everybody. So two blocks down the street, there's this cul-de-sac that kind of led to nowhere except a place where people like to dump their trash. And we thought this would be a great place to build a garden. So we built a food forest here in the fall of 2011, started planting. We planted about 40 fruit trees on the site, about 100 edible shrubs, and got to work growing some food on this site. same thing, just like whoever wanted to come and be involved could be involved. We'd host weekly work parties there, and some people were involved like out there every other day. Other people would come once and never come again. At the end of the street here, I got really involved in doing some wetland remediation work, and we were trying to learn a little bit about community reclamation and restoring degraded and toxic soils. You can see some of the rail lines back here. There's a lot of creosote and all kinds of toxins washing into the wetland here. So I'll show you at the end of my presentation what this used to look like. We sort of transformed this, and we're working on restoring sort of the wetland nature of this little area.
Who owned that strip of 14 by 200?
That was city land mostly, and so
they gave you permission.
Yeah, we got permission. The City of Vancouver has this Green Streets program where they actually have a coordinator who helps pair up communities with that kind of land, and it's really quite a neat sort of municipal program. So we were working with the Green Streets program. Same with the food forest. This land here is actually CN land, so you'll see at the end of my presentation. We did this kind of illegally, but it looks a lot better than it used to. So all these different really unique kind of projects going on at the Purple Thistle. And we had an apiary. We had a little apothecary we were building. All kinds of people getting involved, and I thought it was just this really unique, interesting project, very different than a lot of other community gardens. And I was really starting to kind of wonder about it. And at the same time as I'm involved in all these different community garden projects, I was also doing a master's degree at Royal Roads University and studying in environmental education and communication. It's a mouthful. And I was wondering a lot at the time about how does place impact who we are? So how does the built environment and the places we engage with impact who we are? And I wanted to explore this more, and this is way too big of a question for a master's research project, but that's what I was interested in, and I was supposed to do this research, so that's where I started. And I went out and I started asking people who were involved in the Purple Thistle Garden, who were really quite engaged with that garden, and asking them questions kind of around this theme. And so I talked to 7 people, really open interviews, just asking questions, sitting in the garden, how does place impact who we are? And I saw in those conversations, and also in reading and just being interested in this stuff, like that there was something about different environments that created different kinds of power relationships in the city. And so the Purple Thistle was quite a radical space where the power relations were really different than they are traditionally in the city. And I started really wondering, what role does the built environment play in creating power relations in society? So what relationship do the structures we build in our cities have to the way that power is manifested in our societies and our cultures? I was really interested in this question, and I was starting to read all kinds of really interesting academic work and community-based kind of work that was talking about this in different ways. And so I went back to the Purple Thistle, and we had a big group meeting with a bunch of people, and again, really open questions. I presented back some of the themes that I'd heard from my first interviews, and just kind of explored some more questions. And out of that, I came to what became sort of my finished research question, which is how may involvement in the Purple Thistle Food Commons influence participants' engagement with the built environment? So how does being involved in this garden start to involve people in a conversation with the city? Does it change that conversation they're having with the built environment? Does it change the way that they participate or become involved in different landscapes in the city, the way they think about these different spaces? Does it help to move people into position to come into some kind of active engagement with the city? Does it make them kind of do something, or pledge themselves to do something in the city? I was really curious about this, and I wanted to explore it more. And I'd already really been exploring it, and I was finding that there was something here. So I had these really in-depth interviews. I talked to 10 people, and I gathered all this data. I was doing research now, so I'm talking about my research.